Hi, this is Orlando City Commissioner Robert Stewart. Very soon I'll be retiring from my position after 20 years of service to the citizens of Orlando, but before I retire, I wanted to leave a gift of history. I've had the wonderful opportunity to interact with so many people that have had such an impact on our city and how it's grown and how it's developed. Please join me on this audio journey as we meet these very interesting and influential people. Thank you for joining us again today with the Orlando History Makers. I'm your host, Orlando City Council member Robert Stewart, asking for just a few minutes of your time as we learn what makes our city and our community so exciting and vibrant. As I've shared before, it's my intent to bring some of the great stories of Orlando's history to life, and to look at the impact of these events and the people, and to create an interest in our very exciting history. Today, once again, I'm joined by one of my favorite people in the whole world, a person who I've respected for years, Senator Mel Martinez. So, Senator, should I call you Senator or Secretary or Mel?
Mel would work best. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, let's make it Mel.
Is that okay with you? Senator Martinez is a native of Cuba, came to Orlando along with his brother and my friend Rafael during the Operation Pedro Pan. He attended Bishop Moore in my district, by the way, attended Orlando Junior College, which some of us will remember actually what Orlando Junior College was, and eventually earned his BS in law degree at Florida State. He came back to Orlando, practiced for 25 years, and before beginning his public service. He was elected mayor of Orange County in 1998. He served as the 12th Secretary of the Housing and Urban Development under President George Bush from 2001 to 2004, and later elected for the state of Florida as a senator in 2004, and retired from there in 2010 before joining JP Morgan Chase. Now I've just put a ton of information in a short amount of time, but I want to tell you that what's neat about Senator Martinez is he's written his autobiography called A Sense of Belonging, From Castro's Cuba to the U.S. Senate, One Man's Pursuit of the American Dream. By the way, it's a great book. Thank you. It's Senator Martinez's autobiography, and it was released in 2008. Mel, thank you for joining me today.
It's a great pleasure to be with you, Robert.
Before we begin, your early life is so fascinating, and I'd like to just have you share a little bit about that so that people can kind of set the stage for your influence in our communities. Tell us a little bit about coming to Orlando.
Well, I think the story of coming to Orlando of myself and later my family is one of the kind of community Orlando is and always has been. I had to leave Cuba as a youngster because of the oppression and the brutal dictatorship.
And that was like about 1960, 61?
62 when I came, yeah. But the dance began with Castro in 1959. Yeah. And so by early 1961, my parents had decided that I just shouldn't stay because it was not going to be safe for a young man to grow in that environment. Military service, everything else was coming upon us, plus a lack of freedom and religious liberty. So in any event, they made a very tough decision. I came out, my brother came as well, and I was sent to a foster home in Orlando, and I live here with two different foster families. That begins the Orlando story for me, which is the kindness of those people, the goodness of their heart in welcoming me to their home as a complete stranger. A person didn't speak their language. They didn't know anything about him. They didn't know how long he'd be with them.
So you showed up. So what, you were about 14 or 15?
15. I was 15,
so
yeah.
You don't know any English.
No.
You've been raised only in Cuba.
Right.
And Cuba essentially had gone downhill because of Castro's reign in terms of the general. What did your mom and dad do for a living in
My father was a veterinarian, and my mother was a hairdresser, part-time hairdresser. Yeah. She was also a mom a lot of the time. And
they sent their two kids to...
Yeah, it was a very tough decision.
Oh, man.
You know. And my longtime pastor, now deceased, for Father John McCormick, one time said it just speaks to the faith that they had in God and in this country, to do that. And I think that's really absolutely well put. And so it was as a result of desperation, really. Yeah. And so anyway, 4 years later, they were able to come. And again, it intersects with the Orlando story. By then, I graduated from Bishop Moore. I'm at OJC, Orlando Junior College, for those who might not remember the history.
Yeah, it's now on the site of Lake Highland.
Lake Highland Prep. Yeah. And so anyhow, it was a very fine school, by the way. It's a 2-year school. But anyhow, my parents come, and, Robert, the thing that was so incredible about this community is that they came penniless, homeless. My father had a good veterinary practice. My family had a substantial business. We were not the elite rich, but we would live well. And all of a sudden, we're here, penniless. My parents are jobless and everything else. I, as a 19-year-old, went to see Mr. T.G. Lee. If you drink T.G. Lee milk,
that's right.
T.G. Lee milk, thank you. Anyway, and I went to see him, and I said, my dad's a vet. You have 2,000 head of cattle out by the airport, which today would be Lee Vista Center by 436. And eventually he ended up, in a few days' time, with some conversation, hiring my father to be an in-house vet for them.
Oh, that's cool.
So that began our life in Orlando. But, he did it out of generosity and goodness of his heart to even let me in his office as a presumptuous kid.
How old were you at the time, 19?
I was 19 at OJC, and I knew my parents were finally going to be able to get out, and they were coming in the next few months. And I said, Mr. Lee, he needs to have a job. I don't want him training a taxi cab or washing dishes at Ronnie's, to hit another historical note. And so anyway, but he was incredibly kind and open and said, let's give him a try. But in addition to that, we set up housekeeping at a modest home on Pine Street, East Pine Street, near Herndon. And our doors were overwhelmed with knocks of generosity, people coming in with things, furniture, dishes, all kinds of things.
Oh, that's so cool.
A washer dryer one day just appeared. It was all used stuff, but it was great. We were so happy. And in a matter of a month, my dad had a job. We had a house full of, manageable furniture and dishwasher and so forth. Not only dishwasher, washer and dryer. And we managed. We started our lives here, And so anyway, that to me speaks greatly about the kind of city community that Orlando was in those days. And I think in many ways is still today.
So you got here. And so at 19, now you're at OJC.
Right.
You end up going to FSU and stay up there for law school.
Right.
Okay.
And I met Kitty there, my wife, and she was from Mobile, Alabama. We met in Tallahassee and began our lives. We were married by the time I started law school. I graduated from law school and came back to practice in Orlando. And just very coincidentally, after applying for jobs everywhere, I settled here in Orlando because Kitty found it more acceptable than going all the way to Miami, which would have been a little foreign for her coming from Mobile, Alabama. And so anyhow, Orlando seemed like a comfortable place. Of course, I'd grown up here. I'd gone to high school here. And it was my good fortune to join a small but delightful law firm by the name of Billings Frederick, Wooten, and Honeywell. Yeah, and Bill Frederick, who later became our mayor, was one of the senior fellows at the firm. And I learned so much from them. Yeah. And it was a great way to start my professional life.
And by the way, and Butch Wooten, of course, is a dear friend of mine.
Yes.
And those 4 or 5 names, including yours, have had an incredible influence on our community. And I think it's part generation, but it's also part this kind of, I'd say, kind of a mutual feeling between professionals of we're going to care about our community.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that was really, there were several things. You need to be good at what you do, competent beyond the question. And you need to be involved in your community because that's really good for the firm. It was essentially the build a community and then, building there will come. Yeah. But Bill Frederick started to have these lunches at our office that you may have gone to at some point.
Yes,
I'm sure your brother Joe did. And these lunches were just a way of inviting people from the community into our office. So I think it was Thursday lunches, and we'd bring in a little catering. And it was always very simple, sandwiches, whatever. But there was always interesting people there. And I was getting to know people and people were getting to know me. And it was just so interesting, I remember Jim Green was a regular of the Greenway today.
The Greenway.
Yeah, exactly. And so many other notables, Jerry Chicone and Oh gosh, really amazing local leaders that later did so many good things for our community.
These are all guys who are, I would say, a half a generation ahead of me,
Right.
but became friends through family and through the work we did together.
Exactly, and they were leaders. They were community builders. That's who they were.
Okay, so now you're practicing law, and so how did you get to become mayor of Orange County?
Well, it was quite a step, right? And so when Bill Frederick had run for mayor of Orlando, I got a little bit involved in his campaign. I had a nose for the political thing. And so I helped him a good bit, as much as I could, to become elected. Worked a lot with your brother Jacob, who was very involved in the campaign. And Jacob and I became dear friends through that time and remained great friends ever since. And through that involvement, I remember that I told Frederick, I said, Bill, there's a little hidden voting bloc out there. They're Hispanics, they're Cubans, they're Puerto Ricans. And in those days, it was a lot Cuban, more than Puerto Ricans, frankly. And so I said, Bill, I want to start a little committee and get him involved and get him interested in your race. And so that began,
That's cool.
Isn't that interesting in those days, And so that got me interested in this community in a different way, as a leader, as a servant. Bill appointed me to be in the Orlando Housing Authority, and so I served in the Orlando Housing Authority for 4 or 5 years, trying to make that place better and to help the neediest of the needy who needed a place to live, a safe home, and a place to call home. And so that was great work, very interesting. We did a lot of things to modernize, to bring it, frankly, into a newer age, to try to break some barriers that have been there for a long time, racial and otherwise. And it was interesting work, at times challenging, but it was good work. And so then, not long after that, Bill asked me to serve as part of the Orlando Utilities Commission. So I served as a commissioner on the commission, got to meet and work closely with Jerry Chicone and a lot of other good leaders. Mayor Hood became mayor during that transition time, and so I got to work with her in that role as well. And I think my profile was raised a bit during that time, and people began to ask me if I wouldn't consider running for Orange County mayor. Principally among them, one of the earliest ones and most forceful was Charlie Gray, one of the real community builders of this community, And so he and some others were persuasive enough for me to say, I'm at a point in life where, why not? I'll give it a try. And honestly, hard to explain to people today, but my sole intent was to do some good for this community. I thought, so many people were so good to me and my family when we got here and were so needy. And I had to give something back. I had to pay back. It really was, it was that kind of feeling that this place has been good to me. I've made a living as a good lawyer in this community. I've had the great privilege of serving in volunteer capacities. There's an opening for county mayor. Somebody good had to step in it, and by damn, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be good at it.
Now, Linda Chapin was mayor
right before me.
Her term was
ending. Right, it was a term limited.
Yeah.
So it was 8 years, and she was limited from re-election, and it was an open seat.
Okay.
And so I decided to jump in. There were, I think, 5 of us running, and guess what? I prevailed.
Well, speaking on behalf of Orlando, I'm glad you prevailed. Okay, so now during your tenure, now you go from there to, I guess, the White House, and then to Senate.
Right.
So during your tenure there, you're there for 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little
less than that, actually, but yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a very busy time. We had to expand the Orange County Jail. I hate to start on a kind of a negative note, but that had to be done. We also, growth was a phenomenal problem in Orlando in those days. It was just unbridled growth, and it was really becoming a challenge to the quality of life. So I felt like we needed to do something, particularly as it related to schools. And if I had to look back and say, what were the couple of salient points of what your time as mayor of Orange County were, I would say what became known as the Martinez Doctrine. Yeah. I never labeled it that, but the Orlando Sentinel did. And it was essentially to say, we are not going to develop in this particular area of Orange County until we make allowances for what happens to the schools. That was an unusual role for county government to take. And it was challenged in the courts. I felt confident. And Tom Wilkes, my very fine county attorney, told me, I think you're in the right. And we surely enough prevailed. And so, in other words, if you're going to add 300 homes, and those 300 homes are going to have a phenomenal impact on, you name it, elementary school, name it, middle school, high school, we need to make an allowance, and we need to work with the school board, in order for there to be accommodations. Where are these kids going to go to school? How are we going to improve the school to be able to accept this additional population? So that became known as the Martinez Doctrine. It was very, very much spurned by the development community. I mean, this was a big disruptor. This was a big inconvenience. But at the end of the day, it was, number one, the right thing to do, and number two, it had great approval by people who understood it as being the right thing to do for our community.
Well, but now let's go back. Go look ahead 25 or 30 years.
Yeah.
That is common practice.
Now it's a given.
And the idea that when a developer comes in, we start with, what are you doing for infrastructure? What are you doing for schools?
Right. And there were impact fees for some of the infrastructure stuff, but there was nothing for school.
Yeah.
I mean, that just was an afterthought. Well, it wasn't even an afterthought. It just happened.
Yeah.
And so it was quite a dramatic change. A lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people were challenged by that, or challenged me. But the people spoke. I mean, it was very popular. People supported it overwhelmingly. And so that became a really important cornerstone.
So how did you get from there to the White House?
Oh, gosh. Well, so Jeb Bush is governor.
Yeah.
And he and I became very friendly, and I worked very closely with him. I had been involved in a growth management commission because of some of this work on managing growth in Orange County. He had asked me to participate in this growth management commission for the state of Florida. And from there, his brother became a candidate for president. I became involved in his campaign and got to know him quite well. And if you might remember the election of 2000, it was a very historical election, very contested.
Especially in Florida.
Especially in the I-4 corridor. So therefore, George W. Bush, as he was campaigning as governor of Texas to be president, spent a lot of time in Orlando. And guess who was here to welcome him every time? Mel Martinez. And so we got to know each other. And so when he went to Washington, he invited me to be a part of his cabinet. Jeb Bush called me one day out of the county commission meeting. And fortunately, it was almost lunchtime. And I said, we're going to take a lunch recess a little early. And I went and talked to Jeb. And then he told me, he said, my brother's calling because he wants you to. In any event, it was a very big surprise and a very exciting moment for me, for my family, I think for this whole community, really.
Very well deserved. And I can't think of a greater compliment to your level of service than to have the President of the United States call and say, would you come and serve in my cabinet?
And not only that, but also a compliment to the people of this community that elected me as a Hispanic. This was not today Hispanic population of this community. It was, I remember by the polling, it was around 8%. Registered voters are probably more like 4%. and so the majority population of this community elected a Hispanic.
Yeah.
That just speaks highly of this community.
But you go to HUD with a little different level of experience than a typical government administrator.
Right.
You go to HUD with the fact that you had that the community had reached out to you as a young child. It has an incredible impact on you on the lifetime. You also go to HUD looking at what local governments can do for housing and for infrastructure. And so you step in.
The housing authority too, the Orlando Housing Authority.
That's right.
So it was
and so you end up with kind of this grassroots understanding of what happens out in the country. And now all of a sudden you're at the highest level.
I'm at the pinnacle. And so, the interesting thing is that I had to have people help me for my confirmation here in the Senate. I had 3 weeks to prepare, from learning how to spell HUD, H-U-D, Housing and Urban Development, to really understanding the intricacies of the department, particularly as it related to the federal involvement, to what the federal government did in the funding and the budgeting and so forth. But anyway, I managed well enough to get a confirmation, by the way, 100-0, which was unheard of. Yeah. Well, today it would never happen, but it's a different day. Yeah. And so people could vote across party lines and not be threatened with their lives.
Gosh, that's the truth.
Anyway, so I became HUD secretary. And it wasn't not only that, Robert, but I am a member of the president's cabinet. And I just want to set the scene for you, okay? I'm now a member of the cabinet. It's our first cabinet meeting. I am around the big mahogany table in the conference room just adjacent to the Oval Office in the White House. And, I'm looking around the room, and then the President of the United States, Vice President Cheney, and then there's Donald Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense, Colin Powell, the Secretary of State, John Ashcroft, the Attorney General. I look around and go, what are you doing? The hell am I doing here? Seriously. I look around and I go, wow, there's a bust of Jefferson. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm this kid who came from Cuba. Yeah. And here's where I've arrived. Yeah. And I'm being more candid than I normally would be in my awe and amazement, but it really was. And the whole time I kept silently praying, please don't call on me to say anything. I don't think I could have formed a sentence. I later found out that not only that, but the president would ask a member of the cabinet to open the meeting with a prayer. And in addition to that, he would also pre-ask, I want you and you and you get a call. The president wants you to give an update on what's happening at HUD and this or that area, and you give an update to the cabinet on that. So it was kind of preordained. Yeah. But it was still a fun moment to just sit there and think, wow, where have I arrived? But it was an interesting job, and working now, understanding what Orlando Housing Authority was, what housing authorities around the country were and needed to be. But beyond the housing authority part, there's so much more that HUD did and that we worked on in trying to modernize the housing, trying to improve the way communities develop. And then one thing I took very personal was the issue of homelessness. And that really began a passion of mine for affordability of housing and homelessness, both issues that still bedevil our country today. Yeah. And we did a lot. I hired a really brilliant guy to work on the homelessness problem, and we did a lot. And so I'm very proud of the things we accomplished. This isn't about that. Yeah. And so I'll only tell you that I'm proud of what we did.
Well, I'm proud of what you accomplished too. And there's a whole lot of other stuff we can talk about, but I'm going to get back to
for another day. Back to Orlando, exactly.
So in the Orlando area, you're in a unique position. As mayor of Orlando, you have public safety underneath you, but that doesn't include the sheriff's department. So the sheriff's department runs independently, although I guess you guys help with the funding of it.
All of it, really. The county funds it.
Yeah, but it really is a separate elected official.
A separate elected official, county budget funds it, but yeah.
But underneath your direct responsibility is the fire department and the jail system, which is
correct.
Then underneath that is this incredible growth of happening in the convention center and the growth of Disney and opening up 2 or 3 really new things, and then Universal starts to take off.
Right.
And it's kind of a crazy 4 or 5 years for what we're accomplishing.
Yeah, no, it really is, because it was a pivotal moment. And the convention center, by the way, not only the construction of it, the development of it, the constant need to be bringing in new business and all of that, but the economic impact that it has on this overall community, whether it's Disney, Universal, or just the hotel, motel industry, and restaurants. The convention center is a huge driver of this community's economy. But then the airport too. The county mayor sits on the board of the airport, sits on the Expressway Authority board, and of course, it's the county commission as well. So you really have a pulse of all this going on in this community. But the jail was a huge problem, and so we had to really just enlarge it. There was just not enough room. And as the community grows, those things have to be done.
We often forget and I see it from my role. My role is really public safety and what I would call land management. That's what the goal is. Mm-hmm. But that's the role of the city. You get above that to the county. It's a little bit broader spectrum. Right. And then, of course, state is broader than federal is even more. So, but your leadership has been wonderful. Are there any? I'm going to ask kind of a loaded question. Are there any kind of behind the curtains stories that you can share about your involvement at the Orange County mayor?
Oh man, I do remember the issues at the jail were significant because we were having lots of bad things happen there. Yeah. And Tom Herbert came to be my director of public safety.
Oh yeah.
Boy, he made such a difference.
Former Orlando police chief.
Yeah. And that began a trend. A couple of more did that. The second thing that's really interesting is who you hire as county administrator. So important. Such a big deal. Such a job. And Ajit Lachandani, I moved up from director of public works.
He was there forever and wonderful.
I brought him in in that role, but then he stayed through karate's 8 years, and then even beyond until he retired just a few years ago. But boy, he did a great job. He sort of reinvented the role. Jim Harris, you remember that name from the past?
Yeah.
And Jim was county administrator, city administrator, and then county. A terrific gentleman, a great public servant. And Ajit, I think, after Jim Harris was the next.
Ajit was wonderful.
Yeah, and so I think those are some of the things that make a big difference. You know what you do about that. I'll tell you another little behind the curtain thing. I impaneled a group of friends to look at the real estate for the county. Jimmy Hewitt, remember that wonderful gentleman, good dear friend. Jim Seneff, and gosh, it was the third. I can't remember now. Maybe Charlie Gray. I can't remember now precisely. But anyway. And I said, look at our stuff. What is going on here? And the sheriff at that time was like in 5 different places, none of which were adequate for what he was doing. He was bulging out of space. So the old Montgomery Ward on West Colonial Drive was for sale. And so we bought an old Montgomery Ward, which I don't even know if anybody would remember what those are, but there was a Sears kind of a department store with a vehicle center, by the way, which was just custom made for the sheriff. So we bought that, refurnished it, moved the sheriffs there. Kevin Berry was the sheriff. And so that was another one of those little things that I invited people from the private sector to come partner with the government to say, how do we manage this? How best do we do this? You know, with all due respect to public servants, that's not the kind of thinking that public servants employ, you know, because they're constrained by people come, people go, and the political leadership, and they're afraid to step on toes or whatever. But if you impanel a group of smart business people to come and give you some help, and they're willing to do it, and they're competent, and they do it with total selflessness, you know, got to be the right people.
I had a great conversation with Mayor Hood, and she said that part of her success was reaching out into the business community and engaging them in a way to help look for solutions, as opposed to trying to think that everything's going to be handled only by City Hall. How do you reach out?
I felt that there was another great thing I did in this during my time as mayor, which was the after-school programs for middle schoolers, and that was done as a partnership between the county government, obviously, you know, bringing the public school system in, county government helping financially, and then the not-for-profit sector in the Boys and Girls Clubs and the YMCA. And the private sector, the public sector, and the non-for-profit all coming together to do something good, you know, and it was a great thing. And I think those kinds of partnerships, when it comes to the homeless problem, that's how we should tackle it, you know, it's public-private partnerships.
Now tell me who your chief of staff was.
My chief of staff as county mayor was Dan Murphy, who was a political guy, went on back to Washington with me and stayed in Washington as a big highfalutin lobbyist in Washington today. But my initial chief of staff, my campaign transition chief was Jacob Stewart. And Jacob of course, he was head of the chamber at the time. He had done the transition chair for Governor Martinez when he became governor. So he knew something about it. And he had this bright, talented young woman that was his bride, Holly Stewart, and Holly became my press media person as mayor. And so between Dan Murphy and Holly Stewart, they made a great team, and Jacob set the whole mechanics of my office underway so that I could have a successful start.
Teach Jacob, and I'm going to eventually interview him. But Jacob worked for you, went and worked for Jeb.
Worked for Frederick.
And worked for Frederick. But he is known for the Chamber of Commerce, but I can't ever think when he actually was at the Chamber of Commerce. He was doing everything else.
Exactly. But, you know, Jacob is just a quintessential community talent, a talented community servant. You know, I mean, so he did. Was serve this community in one way or another.
Okay, so let's wind up a little bit. Besides, what are some colorful characters? I mean, when I go back and think of you worked with Jim Green. I knew Jim Green a little bit from a distance, and admired him a great deal. And we admired him so much when we finished the Greenway, we named it after him. Rick Fletcher's dad was
A little before my time.
yeah,
I served in OUC with Rick.
yeah, and so these are kind of guys who I hope 20 years from now, people will look back and go, hey, look at the impact that they had. And, I could have the same kind of impact. Who are some other characters?
Oh, man. Well, Jerry Chacon comes to mind immediately.
Yes.
He was just such a character, but he loved history. He loved the history of Orange County, the history of Orlando, the citrus connection to that history. He's done so much for Winter Garden, for the museum there and all that has happened there. So much of it it's got the Jerry Chacon imprint into it, but he was interesting and he was funny and
I loved him.
I mean, he was temperamental and mercurial, I guess the word is.
He always knew where he felt.
He always knew what was going on with him. But there's so many others. My goodness, Charlie Gray, of course, he's a pillar. He is just a monument. He did so much for this community. Such an exciting, interesting person.
That's neat.
Always young. Charlie was always young. And I knew him when he was already a mature man, but he was really always young thinking and young and aggressive. Our politics didn't always intersect, but Linda Chapin and I have great respect for each other, I do believe, and I admire her greatly. And she was the first woman to be county mayor. Glenda Hood, when she came into the mayoral office of Orlando. These are good, interesting people that did great things for this community. But my goodness, there's so many community leaders, Wally Sanderlin. Wally Sanderlin was city commissioner, but he was much more than that. He was just a wise guy around town. Bill Duncan, another interesting fellow who, not in the political world, but he was also a very pivotal guy in this community, always involved, making a difference and doing things for the community.
I followed Wally's lead a little bit. Wally and I are friends, and of course, Wally's kids and I went to school together, as well as Buell's kids. And Wally taught during his entire time Sunday school over at College Park Baptist Church. And when I joined, Wally was, I knew him through my dad, but I also knew him as a Sunday school teacher.
Right.
And so I tried to emulate that, and I have continued that same thing. So now
that's great.
I'm going to finish up my 5th term in a few months. Wally served 5 terms. And so
what is your alter ego in a way, right?
Which should be a great alter ego to have.
Oh, he was just a great gentleman. And I think a gentleman in the fullest sense of the word, just a great gentleman. But there were interesting people, and interesting people that, like a Tom Hurlburt, that don't often get talked about these days. But Tom was such a colorful guy, and he had served, Randall James.
Right,
Speaking of people who were colorful, interesting, and servants, he was a policeman here in Orlando who served the mayors from Langford on. But Hurlburt has some really funny stories about his early days serving Mayor Langford as the Randall James of Mayor Langford, and some of the stories about the crazy things that Mayor Langford did and so forth.
Randall told me one time with Langford that was at some kind of press conference in which the president was going to be there, and they had the presidential logo up on the podium, and Langford tried to get Randall James to go up and steal the
seal, the presidential seal.
He wanted to have the seal. It's just that little thing they travel with, and they put.
I know exactly what it is. Yes.
And what Randall said was that at one time he turned around and Carl Langford had something under his coat, and he just walked out and didn't ask any questions. And so apparently Carl Langford actually stole that. And I thought, I wonder where it actually is.
Where it is today, yeah. Well, I guarantee you, they keep a close eye on that one. If he pulled that off, that was an unusual one to do, because those are not souvenirs.
Okay, let's talk. We mentioned a lot of people, and I think probably it gets kind of to where you and I are in our lives. When you look at legacy and look at kind of what legacy means to you, what's the kind of advice that you give to the kind of the next generation? I mean, you've got very active children, John, who is a good friend of my kids,
very active son as well,
and and served in the county commission, and then now has served. I guess he's in banking along.
Right.
And what a wonderful family they have. But when you look at legacy and you're talking to the next generation, what do you tell them about legacy?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to leave your community better than you found it. If you use that as a barometer, I mean, I want to leave my community better than it was when I was growing up. I want to also improve and maintain the quality of life. There's a reason people come to Florida. There's a reason we love living here and have always loved this community, because of the quality of life. We got to preserve it. We got to maintain it. We got to protect it. That means protecting our environment. It means, being on the lookout for crime. We got to make sure that we don't let crime get out of control, that this is a safe community to live in, that we manage our traffic in a way that doesn't impinge quality of life, that we manage our transportation networks, all of that we do. But leave it better than you found it, Yeah. I remember when Bill Frederick and a number of other community leaders dedicated the airport. Remember that day? I mean, that was a beautiful time. 1980, I think it was. Orlando had a backwater of an airport. Look at that phenomenal airport we have today. Of course, it's grown since, but still, that dedication, that moment, that beginning. So think of those moments, those things that can happen in our community, which years from now will determine the legacy of what it is, what the community is.
Let me tell you, thank you for spending time with me today.
My pleasure.
And if you want to learn more about Senator Mel Martinez, Secretary Mel Martinez, or Mayor Mel Martinez, either one of those, he's got a great book out called A Sense of Belonging, From Castro's Cuba to the U.S. Senate, One Man's Pursuit of the American Dream. It is a wonderful read.
And it talks a lot about Orlando and the goodness of the people of Orlando, by the way, I'm proud to say.
And it's a wonderful read. And there's plenty of information on orlandomemory.org and some great stuff about Mel on the internet. So I appreciate that. And that background has been a wonderful background. So thank you. I appreciate it. I'm so honored to spend time with you and speak on behalf of our entire community. Let me express my thanks for you and the impact that you've had on our city and our community is a lasting impact. And I appreciate that. In my case, you've been this kind of wonderful example of what I would call genuine leadership. And I knew that before you took on formal leadership. So I knew the personality and I knew your dedication to our community. And that's an envy to many in our community. I want to tell you how much I appreciate it.
And let me just add one word of thanks to you as a community leader, as a public servant, as an elected official. You have never looked at your job as having to do with the next election, but having to do with the next generation. So as you conclude your service here in the next year or so, I just want to thank you for your service and all that you've done for our community.
You're very kind.
My city of Orlando.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank our listeners for taking time today and taking a few moments with us today. So that's it for now. Please look for discussions with Orlando history makers on this podcast channel. I'm your host, Orlando City Commissioner Robert Stewart, and I appreciate you listening. Remember, let's value our past, let's learn from it, and make our future brighter than ever. Thank you.